They thought they were clever, didn't they? Smiling in your face, while planting thorns in your path, speaking your name, while sharpening the knife behind your back. They played their game well. Oh, they did. And you? You stayed kind. You stayed loyal. You kept showing up, even when your soul was limping. But here's what they never understood. You weren't walking alone. You were walking under the eyes of God. And while they whispered lies in the dark, God sat in silence, watching everything. Now the silence is breaking, not with noise, but with justice, because karma doesn't shout. It whispers, and then it strikes. The theater of betrayal. They didn't just hurt you, they performed it. Like actors stepping onto a stage, they built from your trust, your kindness, your wide-open heart. They rehearsed every line, perfected every expression, gave just enough affection to keep you close, just enough hope to keep you forgiving, just enough decency to keep you doubting your instincts. But it was never genuine. Not the smiles, not the apologies, not even the tears. It was a show, and you were cast as the fool who didn't know the script. But oh, you knew. Somewhere deep inside you saw it. You felt the curtain tremble before it rose. You noticed how their eyes didn't match their words, how their comfort came only when you were down, how your silence was the only thing that kept the peace. You were living in a play where the villain was always applauded and the one who gave everything was always blamed. They played you, yes, but let's be clear, that doesn't mean you were weak. That means you were real. You believed in loyalty. You thought love was sacred. You thought honesty still mattered. You assumed that what you gave, patience, time, devotion, would be honored if not returned. But what they saw was an opportunity, a stage to exploit, a heart they could drain without consequences. You weren't a person to them. You were a role, a resource, a background character in the story of their ego. And the cruelest part? They made you question you. They made you wonder if you were too sensitive, too intense, too emotional, when really you were just too awake in a world that thrives on pretending. They wore masks, but not the kind you can see. No. Their masks were stitched with charm and pity, with fake vulnerability that disarmed you. They'd open up just enough to keep your guard down. They'd dangle just enough pain to keep you trying to fix them. And every time you pulled away, they pulled you back. Not because they missed you, but because they missed the power. They missed the feeling of control. They missed the safety of knowing someone out there loved them more than they deserved. And when it all started to crack, when you began to see through the costume, when your eyes stopped clapping for their performance, they turned the script around, didn't they? Now you were the problem. You were too cold, too distant, too selfish. They flipped the entire play upside down and made you apologize for walking away from the fire they started. But the truth? The truth is this: they never loved you, not fully. They loved your loyalty, they loved your energy, they loved how your presence made them feel valuable. But you, the soul behind the kindness, they never truly saw. Because if they did, they would have protected you, not performed on you. And yet here's what they'll never understand. You were not destroyed, you were awakened. The pain didn't break you, it revealed you. It showed you the mirrors you needed to smash. It taught you that not every person who claps for you wants to see you win. And it reminded you that being good-hearted doesn't mean being blind. You learned to listen not just to words, but to patterns. You learned that trust is earned, not begged for. And above all, you learned that no matter how convincing the actors may be, time always exposes the truth of the play. So let them continue their performance elsewhere. Let them seek new stages, new audiences, new hearts to impress. Because they didn't just lose a person, they lost a sanctuary, a defender, a soul that walked through fire for them without asking for applause. And one day, when the lights go out, when the crowd grows silent, when they find themselves in the empty echo of their own choices, they'll remember not the show, not the spotlight, but the one who watched from the front row and finally stood up and walked out. God's silence is not absence. It's strange, isn't it, the quiet moments, the ones where the world is loud with betrayal, but heaven says nothing. You sat there in the wreckage of your trust, in the stillness of nights that felt too long and too dark. You asked questions, not just of people but of the skies. You looked up, not because you needed an answer, but because your soul needed someone to witness what was being done to you. And all you got was silence. No thunder, no sign, no sudden justice crashing through the roof. Just the echo of your own heartbeat. Tired, bruised, faithful. And in that silence, you almost believed you were alone. But you weren't. You never were. You see, God does not interrupt liars mid-sentence. He lets them speak. He lets them paint the full illusion. He lets them dig the hole, deeper and deeper. Not because he approves, but because he sees further than you can. Because what looks like silence is sometimes divine patience in disguise. While they mocked your sincerity, God took note of every word they whispered in the dark. While they smiled and stabbed, he measured their every intention. Not by appearance, but by truth. You see, humans judge from the outside. They're fooled by performance. But God? He reads motives like an open book. He doesn't react to masks. He waits for them to fall. He doesn't rescue you in the middle of the manipulation. Because sometimes you have to see the full play to understand who they truly are. If he rescued you too early, you'd return. You'd give them another chance. You'd call it a misunderstanding. So he lets you see it, all of it. He lets the mask slip. He lets the words grow venomous. He lets the silence stretch, not to punish you, but to protect your future. He knows that temporary heartbreak is better than lifelong deception. So while you wept in your room, while you clenched your chest trying to make sense of how someone could be so calculated with your heart, God was not absent. He was sitting beside you, holding your spirit in stillness, letting the truth unravel at its own pace. Because real justice takes time. Not because God is slow, but because he is thorough. He's not interested in revenge that makes noise. He's interested in justice that teaches. And sometimes the ones who hurt you aren't just breaking you. They're building their own downfall. One lie at a time. One betrayal at a time. And God watches with mercy for you and with silence for them. Until the day comes when silence ends and the consequence begins. That's what they never realized, that their actions weren't hidden, not from the heavens, not from the one who watched you stay kind when you could have turned cold, who watched you forgive when you could have cursed, who watched you hold yourself together when the easiest thing would have been to break. You didn't just survive what they did to you, you grew from it. You didn't become bitter, you became aware, and in that awareness God began a transformation, not in them, but in you. Because divine justice isn't always about what happens to them. Sometimes it's about what awakens in you because of what they did. And when the moment finally comes, when the scales tip, when truth rises, when the mask falls completely, it won't be loud, it won't be theatrical. Karma has no need for applause. God's justice has no need for spectacle. It'll happen quietly, naturally, inevitable like the sunrise. And you won't even need to witness it. You'll be too far, too healed, too at peace to care. But you'll feel it, that sense of closure without confrontation, that holy whisper that says, "Now you see why I was silent. Now you understand." So if you're in that silence right now, don't panic. Don't beg for signs. Don't demand a storm. Instead, be still. Listen. Observe. Strengthen. Because God is not ignoring you. He is preparing you. He's rewriting the script. And when He moves, it won't just expose the lie, it will elevate the truth you stood on. Not because you were perfect, but because you remained real in a world full of actors. Karma does not forget. There's something beautifully terrifying about the laws of life, something that doesn't require noise, warnings, or witnesses. It's called karma, and unlike the games people play, karma doesn't bluff. It doesn't shout across the room or slam doors on its way out. Karma waits. While they were out there thinking they got away with it, laughing at your kindness, mocking your patience, spinning their stories like a spider weaves its web, karma was writing. It was watching, and it was keeping score in a way no human ever could. Because karma is not about punishment, it's about balance. It doesn't come for revenge, it comes for justice. Not yours, not mine, but the kind the universe owes to truth itself. They thought the damage they caused would dissolve in your silence, that your dignity, the way you walked away instead of fighting back, was weakness. But karma sees what they don't. It saw every tear you wiped away when no one was watching. It felt every ache in your chest when you swallowed words you had every right to scream. It counted every time you chose peace over chaos, restraint over retaliation, grace over games. And for every lie they told, for every false version of you they spread, for every time they smirked while your heart cracked quietly, karma made a note. Not for wrath, not for destruction, but for balance. Because in this life, everything circles back. Karma doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't ask you how you want it served. It simply arrives. Sometimes in the same form, sometimes through the same hands, and sometimes in ways they never imagined. It comes not to break them, but to teach them what they refused to learn when your love was the lesson. You see, when someone mishandles a pure soul, they don't just lose that person. They invite a curriculum of consequences, because life has a way of mirroring back what we give, only magnified. So the lies they told, one day they'll find themselves surrounded by people who can't tell the truth. The loyalty they broke, one day they'll need it and discover no one around them knows how to offer it. The kindness they mocked, one day they'll long for it and realize it doesn't live where they are anymore. And no, you won't always be there to see it. Sometimes karma unfolds behind closed doors, quietly, surgically, with no audience, no justice parade, no grand finale. But trust this, it always speaks. And when it does, it speaks with the weight of every moment you stayed silent, every time you gave grace, every time you chose to rise instead of retaliate. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to get even. You don't have to clap back. You don't even have to tell your side of the story. Because time has a voice louder than vengeance. And karma knows how to echo through it. But this isn't just about them. It's about you too. Because while karma was working on them, it was also working on you. Not to punish, but to purify. To teach you how to protect your peace. to remind you that not everyone deserves access to your spirit, to strengthen the boundaries they tried to bulldoze. Karma didn't just remember their actions, it remembered your growth, your restraint, your refusal to become what hurt you. And for that, it doesn't just deliver justice on your behalf, it delivers elevation. It lifts you, quietly, steadily, without spectacle. You just start glowing differently, speaking differently, moving differently. And suddenly, the pain becomes your past, not your identity. That's when karma becomes something deeper than cosmic justice. It becomes a kind of grace, a whisper from the universe that says, "You didn't lose, you were redirected." And the ones who tried to bury you, they don't even realize they planted the seeds of your rebirth. So when you think about the ones who used you, manipulated you, walked over you like you were nothing, don't wish them harm. Don't curse their name. Don't chase after a justice that's already in motion. Just breathe. Just keep walking. Because karma does not forget, and it always arrives right on time. You don't need revenge, you need peace. There comes a moment, after the heartbreak, after the betrayal, after the 1,000 internal battles you fought in silence, when something inside you shifts. It's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks or a final scream, it arrives in stillness, in the hush after the storm, and it says, you don't need to make them pay, you just need to let go. It's not weakness, it's not surrender, it's the rarest form of strength, the kind that chooses peace over revenge, because truthfully, revenge is loud, but peace is power. It's what they never expected you to find. It's what they tried to rob you of with their manipulation, their lies, their games. They wanted you broken. They wanted you bitter. They wanted you to spiral so they could point at the wreckage and say, "See, that's who they really are." But you didn't give them that satisfaction. You gave them silence. You gave them distance. And now, you're giving yourself something far greater than vengeance. You're giving yourself freedom. You see, revenge is a tempting illusion. It tells you that if you just show them how much they hurt you, if you just hurt them back, you'll finally heal. But healing doesn't come from hurting. Not really. Pain doesn't erase pain, it only echoes it. What heals you is walking away with your dignity intact. What heals you is knowing that your silence speaks louder than your rage ever could. What heals you is understanding that you are not defined by what they did to you, but by what you did after they did it. Did you break, or did you rise? Did you become them, or did you become wiser, softer, stronger? You didn't need to ruin them, you just needed to remember who you are. And that's the power of peace. Because peace is not passive. It's not about ignoring what happened. It's about confronting it without letting it consume you. It's about looking at the scars without needing to show them to the world. It's about carrying the lesson, not the weight. That's how you reclaim your power, not by dragging them through the mud, but by refusing to stay in it with them. Let them keep the chaos. Let them keep the drama. Let them tell their version of the story. You don't owe the world an explanation when your soul knows the truth. And yes, it's hard. It's hard not to react when lies are told about you. It's hard not to defend yourself when they twist the narrative to make you look like the villain. But sometimes, defending yourself means lowering yourself to their level. Sometimes responding just keeps the cycle going. And you're tired, aren't you? Tired of cycles. Tired of explaining yourself to people who never cared to listen. Tired of pouring your heart out to people who only used it as ammunition. So stop. Let them talk. Let them spin their stories. Let them live in the fantasy they created, because the truth doesn't need a defense. It reveals itself in time. Always. Peace is what they never had. That's why they tried to destroy yours. People who are at war within themselves will always try to stir conflict in others. But your job is not to fight every battle. Your job is to choose which battles are worthy of your energy and which are just noise. And the people who wronged you, they're noise now. They've said their lines, they've played their part, the curtain has fallen. And you? You're stepping into a new scene. One where you don't need to win arguments. One where you don't need to prove your worth. One where your energy is no longer drained trying to be understood by those who chose to misunderstand you. Let it go. Not for them, but for you. Not because they deserve your forgiveness, but because you deserve your peace. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about saying, I'm not carrying this anymore. It's about cutting the chain that ties your heart to a moment of pain. It's about choosing joy when bitterness is easier. It's about protecting your light in a world that tried to dim it. You forgive to move forward, not to let them back in, but to walk away clean, to walk away whole. And don't worry, life has a way of showing people exactly who they are. It may not happen when you want it to, but it happens. The same hands they use to manipulate you, one day they'll feel the absence of the warmth you once offered. The same tongue they used to speak against you, one day it'll ache in the silence of their own guilt. Not because you wished it, but because that's how the universe works. What you send out eventually returns. So send out peace, send out grace, not for their sake, but for yours. Because peace is where your power is. Peace is where your rebirth begins. When you stop chasing justice and start choosing inner calm, you take your life back. You stop being a character in their chaos and start becoming the author of your own story. You realize that the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's thriving. It's healing. It's sleeping at night with no weight on your chest. It's waking up without resentment in your blood. It's smiling not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer poisoned by what they did. You turned the page. You closed the chapter. And no matter how many times they reread it, you're already writing the next one. So choose peace, even when anger feels righteous. Even when justice feels overdue, even when silence feels like surrender. Because the truth is, your peace isn't a pause. It's a declaration. It's you saying, I'm done giving my soul to people who were never ready for it. It's you reclaiming what they tried to shatter. And it's you proving not to them, but to yourself, that you were never weak for being kind and never foolish for walking away without setting fire behind you. Because you don't need revenge, you just need peace, and that is more than enough. Their echo is coming, yours already left a mark. There is something poetic about the end of a story they thought they wrote, something quietly thunderous about the way truth survives distortion. They tried to bury you with whispers, didn't they? With smirks behind closed doors, with words that dripped poison into the ears of those too shallow to seek the truth. They thought your silence was erasure. They thought your absence meant defeat, but you were never erased. You were etched into hearts, into moments, into memories that refused to forget how pure your presence was. They thought they'd be the last echo, that the world would hear their side, believe it, and move on. But echoes fade. And the truth? The truth doesn't echo. It roots, and yours has already taken hold. You see, they screamed for attention, you healed in silence. They performed for the crowd, you endured backstage. They lit fires hoping you'd burn. but you became flame-proof. Not because you never hurt, but because you learned how to survive your own ashes. While they were trying to be remembered, you were becoming unforgettable. There's a difference. Because echoes are loud for a moment, but impact is quiet and permanent. The way you treated people, the sincerity in your eyes, the way you showed up even when you were the one bleeding. That kind of presence doesn't need defending. It leaves a mark time can't erase, a legacy not measured in noise, but in stillness, in respect, in how your name feels when it's spoken by those who truly knew you. And now they're beginning to feel it, aren't they? The echo's fading, the attention is waning. The lies don't hit like they used to. The narrative is wearing thin. Because here's the truth. When someone builds their story by tearing yours down, they borrow power. They don't possess it. They rent it, temporarily, from a world that always demands receipts. And one day, they look around and realize the people they impressed are gone. The spotlight they stole has shifted. And what's left is the haunting sound of their own echo, returning to them empty. No applause, no audience, just the sound of their own choices, echoing back like a hollow drum in an empty hall. But your legacy, it's still moving, not because you forced it, but because truth doesn't need help standing. Your kindness outlived their cruelty, your grace outshined their games. And now, without lifting a finger, without shouting your version from the rooftops, your energy speaks. People remember. Maybe not all of them, maybe not the ones who mattered back then, but the right ones, the ones who felt your authenticity, who saw what you carried, who now, in hindsight, whisper, they were never the problem. And you? You're not who you were when this all started. You're not the version of you they thought they broke. You're quieter now, not because you're scared, but because you're grounded. You're more selective, not because you're bitter, but because you finally know your worth. You learned how to build peace in the ruins. You learned how to hold your head high with dust still on your shoulders. And most of all, you learned that being misunderstood isn't the worst thing. Being defined by people who never understood you is. So you stopped fighting for clarity from the blind. You stopped begging for truth in spaces committed to fiction. And in doing so, you rose. That's the beauty of divine order. You don't have to rush vindication. You don't have to manipulate it. Time does the work. Character does the work. And your silence? It's been louder than every lie ever told. Your absence? It's been heavier than any presence they've tried to replace you with. Because there are people who perform real, and then there are those who embody it. You didn't need theatrics. You didn't need applause. You just kept showing up for your own soul, quietly becoming everything they swore you'd never be without them. Now the echoes returning to them. The faces they used to impress have turned. The games that once gave them power now reveal their patterns. And the people who once clapped for their cruelty are slowly remembering your silence. That's karma, not fire, not wrath, just the haunting sound of reality catching up. You won't always be there to see it, but you'll feel it, in the shift, in the peace, in the strange weight lifting off your chest when you realize you never had to make them pay. Life did, and not because you demanded it, but because energy always returns home. Let them feel it. Let the echo wrap around them, not out of vengeance, but as a reminder, not because you want them to hurt, but because they need to hear what they try to drown out with noise. And meanwhile, keep walking. Not away, but forward, into a version of yourself that they could never touch, into peace that they can't reach, into love that doesn't require you to bleed just to be seen. Because your echo is no longer just an echo. It's a mark, a presence, a legacy. And theirs? It's a shadow of something that once made noise, but never made meaning. So when they ask, "Where did you go?" let your silence answer. When they wonder, "Why are people seeing through me now?" let karma respond. And when they finally sit with the weight of their own echo, know this: you didn't disappear. You transcended.